Today, I'm going to give you a beautiful question and brain hack that will get that wonderful overthinking brain of yours working for you a little bit better. I'm Alex Sorensen from Easier Habits, and I coach overthinking entrepreneurs in how to turn their anxiety and overwhelm into unstoppable action. This is actually one of two questions I'll be talking about this week, so if you're curious about powerful questions that can reshape the way you think and help you work more effectively, all right, like this video, subscribe, get our next video as well. So this is the first question, and the first question you can ask that will make your life better and get your brain working for you is, how can I make this easier? Or what would it look like if this were easy and fun? That's the Tim Ferriss version of this question. I recently used this with my kids who are fighting a lot, and recently it's just been a lot. It's been a downward spiral. My wife and I have worked a lot on how to motivate them to get along, how to demotivate them from fighting, how to teach them skills for working, for like negotiation and emotional regulation. And so, I taught them negotiation lessons during the summer and radical compassion lessons. And I didn't really work on the golden lever that is often overlooked, unfortunately, even by me, which is, how could we make this easier? And this time I selfishly asked the question, all right, they're gonna fight. How can I make their fights easier on me? And what my wife and I had been doing is going into where they're fighting, hearing both sides, judging blame. In the case where the stories don't add up, some of them might be lying, and then we have to accuse them of lying, and they say, no, we're not lying, despite all evidence to the contrary. And then I have to think through, all right, what is the right punishment? Do I need to give him a punishment for lying on top of shoving his brother? Or like, what, it's this whole morass, and then they fight about the consequences. They fight whether it was fair. They fight about whether they were lying. And it just becomes a huge deal, and everyone is frustrated and exhausted. So what would it look like if I made that process as easy as possible? What is like the simplest way I could respond to a fight, aside from ignoring it and letting it escalate, which would, in the long run, be much, much more terrible? And so what I came up with is two steps. One, I ring a bell, and whenever they fight, just to get their attention. And then two, I flip a coin, and the coin tells me which kid has to go or stay upstairs, and which kid goes downstairs. So they separate for 10 minutes, and that's it. I'm not going to hear their story. I'm not going to listen to them about blame or who did what. They just separate for 10 minutes. There's no thinking. There's no negotiating about who gets upstairs and who gets downstairs. That is it. And we implemented this just yesterday, and I was surprised at how much better it made that day. Plus, I think the kids got much less worked up. They're not rehearsing their stories of blame. They don't feel aggrieved by our adjudication. It is completely impartial and not up to us. We don't have to do thinking, and so we don't get the blame. And I think even long term, there might be a little bit of benefit there, because we're making less of a big deal of the thing than of fights. They may become less likely to get into fights. They're certainly less likely to tantrum once they do get into fights. So that is an example as a parent of making things easier. But how do I apply this to my business? So last week I did a video on launching a new direct outreach program as a precursor to ads and other things for a new SEO offering. And I thought a lot, for example, about how I would target people, how I'd find people to target, and how I would reach out to them. I create templates to make those things easier. And the real gimme, and this is why making business easier is really difficult, is I was absolutely wrong about the hardest part. The hardest part is, once I had the list of people, figuring out who were people that were really good candidates for my services and maybe merited a nice personalized pitch, versus who are people that already have some level of SEO, and maybe it's a little bit more Hail Mary whether they're interested in new services from me at this point. And so I spent a lot of time just researching different angles of evaluating websites. And there were little things that I imagined along the way of all right, well, maybe I could automate this, right? I was by hand looking, trying to see where this person ranks for a particular keyword in Google, and most sites for most keywords actually don't rank for Google, so it was a lot of wasted time. And then I found a tool that automated that, so I put in their domain, I put in the keyword, it tells me if they rank in the top 100 in Google, which is exciting. So that did make things easier for me. But the real question is, was I targeting the right people in the first place? And so something that I have had a little bit more traction with, and I will have to continue to experiment with both of them, is instead of young companies that I was targeting with a director of marketing who would be highly motivated to do SEO, I might target more long-standing companies, solopreneurs, and local small businesses that don't necessarily have that same expertise. And it's a tricky trade-off. I'm gonna have to figure out how to target small businesses that have the money to invest in SEO. Or I could offer them one of my other services, which is doing a rundown of how to find more money in your business. And so actually that could dovetail. Even if they don't think they have the money for it, I could help them get more of that budget by doing one of my free evaluations that also can lead into coaching. So anyway, I may just be targeting the wrong audience. And that is a tricky thing. And at the end of the day, with business, you just need a volume of experience to figure out how to make things easy. And so the question you should be really adapting in business is, how could I do this at a large volume? If you're just getting started, you're not gonna know what's easy. So you have to ask, how could I do this at high volume? And that will get you the information, the data you then need to know to zero in on a particular niche or a particular tactic. And so that is very different. I don't necessarily with my kids want to ask the question, how could I deal with fights at a higher volume? But in business, that question works wonderfully. How could I contact more people at a higher volume? How could I deliver more, deliver value at a higher volume to my clients, etc.? Those questions work beautifully. And an example of this working effectively for me in my business is with the YouTube videos. So I was doing one a week. Someone challenged me to do 5 a week. That forced me to ask the question, how could I streamline this process? And now I'm spending about as much time producing 3 videos a week as I've settled down to, as I was producing one before, and getting some feedback from my viewers that they're not seeing a drop in quality. So that is a good example of adapting this question, how can I do this at a higher volume, and seeing the benefits of that in my work. So, all right, if your brain is thinking about all the negative things at home or at work, you can ask yourself either, how can I make this easier? Or how can I do this at a high volume so I am forced to find ways to make this easier and get the data I need to make this easier? So how have you asked and used this question in your life or your business? I would love to hear in your comments down below. Please like and subscribe to get more content like this, including my next question coming up, which is, how can you overcome personal bias and get a more objective view of what is going on? So it is very easy to delude yourself in your personal life as well as in business. I have done it myself. So there is a question you can ask that can help you become more objective. As I said, like and subscribe to get that video. And until next week, make big changes, one small habit at a time.